Here, there is another very interesting question about the hiddenness of God. So the idea is, why does God hide so much from people? He could give people dreams to convince them, or clear evidence. Why doesn't he?
Well, he does give people dreams to convince them, if they're open, that there's more stories coming out of the Muslim world than you can imagine right now about that, where people are in closed societies, but they're truly seeking God, and God appears to them, Christ appears to them in dreams and visions. And there are many places you can go for that to discover some of these. I want to say Tom Doyle is a missionary that has documented some of this. I think that's his name. But you hear about it routinely. But the hiddenness of God question is a good question, I think, because you might say, well, why doesn't God just appear to everyone and end all the speculation? Because God's goal is not just is just for you to add another fact that you believe. God isn't necessarily interested in you believing that he exists. He wants to go to a relationship with you where you accept what he's done. It's not just believing that God exists that saves you. It's trusting in him. James, the half-brother of Jesus, who wrote that little book in the New Testament called James, says even the demons believe that God exists, but they tremble. Do you know the demons believe that God exists better than we do? Yeah, but they don't trust in him. So God wants to go from just belief that to belief in. Now, Søren Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher back a couple of centuries ago, had an interesting story about the hiddenness of God. He said this. He said, imagine there was a prince that was looking for a wife, a bride, to ultimately be the king, or be the queen. And he sees from a distance in his jurisdiction a beautiful peasant girl who he immediately falls in love with. And he says to his father, the king, he says, I think I love this girl. I want to be with this girl. But how can I win her hand in marriage? If I go to her with being the prince, she may just accept my invitation so she can one day be the queen. I wouldn't really know if she loved me or not. She would just want to be the queen and accept my invitation. So how can I do this? How can I win her hand in marriage and know that she loves me? So the king says, the only way to do this, son, is to renounce the throne, become a peasant, go into the village and win her as a peer. And so that's what he does. He renounces the throne. He goes into her village as a peasant, because that's what he is now, and he wins her as a peer. And that's what Jesus does for us. He put aside the privileges of the Godhead, as Philippians 2 says. He adds humanity to his deity. He comes to earth to win us as a peer. And we have the opportunity to either accept the invitation or reject it. But if God were to come with all his power and show us his glory, we wouldn't have the capacity to say no. We wouldn't truly be free. The only way love can exist is if you have the freedom to say no, if you have the freedom to make a choice. So God gives us enough evidence to believe that he exists, but not so much that he's going to compel our choice. He gives us enough to know, and he also leaves enough ambiguity so people that don't want him can go their own way. So that's one answer to the hiddenness of God problem. But it's a question I have that I ask myself often, because a lot of times I go, yeah, I wish God would be a little bit more overt, but God knows how much information people need in order for them to be saved. I've noticed, Vasily, and maybe you have too, that most people are looking for God like a criminal's looking for a cop. They don't really want God. That's why I always ask people, if Christianity were true, would you be a Christian? And most of the time, if they're honest, they'll say no. Why? Because they don't want there to be a God. They want to be God of their own lives. They're not on a truth quest or on a happiness quest. It's not so much about the hiddenness of God or even the existence of God. It's about their resistance to God. They don't want God to exist. So God gives us enough to know, but not so much that he's going to try and compel belief.